Well, on to the tax bill.
Well, Republicans are rapidly pushing forward with their efforts to pass President Trump's tax plan, which would overhaul the code in order to shower billions of dollars in tax cuts upon the richest Americans, including President Trump's own family. On Tuesday, the Senate Budget Committee passed the Senate version of the plan, with all Republicans on the panel voting for it and all Democrats voting against. Protesters disrupted the committee hearing Tuesday with chants of "Kill the bill, don't kill us." Several were arrested. The plan will now go to the full Senate for a vote as early as Thursday. The Senate bill slashes the corporate tax rate and gives further tax cuts to wealthy business owners. It would also repeal a key provision of the Affordable Care Act, the requirement that most Americans have health insurance. Experts say recalling this provision, known as the individual mandate, would cause the cost of health insurance to skyrocket. The vote came after President Trump met with Senate Republicans on Capitol Hill. He later told reporters he thinks the Republican tax bill will be, quote, very popular.
We're in a very good position in terms of the meeting we just had over at the Capitol with the Republican senators. It was outstanding. I think we have tremendous support. I was just informed by Mitch that we had a unanimous vote from the Republican side, at least. We had a unanimous vote on the tax bill. And it goes now the next step, and I think we're going to get it passed. I think it's going to pass, and it's going to be very popular. It's going to have lots of adjustments before it ends. But the end result would be a very, very massive, the largest in the history of our country, tax cut.
Democrats have had nearly no say in crafting the tax plan. House and Senate Majority Leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer boycotted a meeting on Tuesday with Trump and Republican lawmakers after he appeared to refuse to negotiate on key issues like spending, health care, and immigration. Trump then held a news conference between two empty chairs with signs for Pelosi and Schumer on them.
I think they want tax increases, and we want major tax decreases. So they decided not to show up. They've been all talk, and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk. So they're not showing up for the meeting.
The image of President Trump surrounded by two empty chairs has appeared to backfire against him and has become a meme. Meanwhile, the House Democratic leader Pelosi responded on Twitter saying, "Real Donald Trump now knows that his verbal abuse will no longer be tolerated. His empty chair photo op showed he's more interested in stunts than in addressing the needs of the American people. Poor Ryan and McConnell relegated to props. Sad," she tweeted. This comes as a House version of the tax bill passed earlier this month would cut the corporate tax rates from 35% to 20%. As the year winds down with no legislative achievements since Trump became president, Republicans say they're determined to pass tax reform by the end of the year. Well, for more, we're joined by Heather McGhee, president of Demos and Demos Action. Heather, wow, a lot has happened in these last 24 hours. Talk about this tax bill that was passed and what the House is also considering.
This tax bill is an outrage. At a time of record economic inequality, when half of American families couldn't pay a $400 bill without going into debt or selling something, this bill would give hundreds of billions of dollars to the wealthiest 1%. It is a sop, not actually to the Republican base, because this is an enormously unpopular bill. If there's one silver lining, it's that the American people are not falling for the Republican tax scam. They understand that it's just going to the wealthy and big corporations that they think are already running away with the store. And so you've got a bill that is historically unpopular. The only bill in polling history that's been more unpopular has actually been the Republican repeal of Obamacare. And yet they, on the Hill, think that this is a political imperative. Why is that? And they've been willing to say it because their donors, some of the wealthiest people in this country, are saying, we will turn off the spigot if you do not pass this tax cut for me, my businesses, and my heirs. It's disgusting. It's immoral. It's going to make it harder for working class and middle class families to buy a house, to pay down student debt and go to college. And the CBO recently said that it's going to raise taxes. This massive Trump tax cut is going to cut his taxes and those of his children, but it's going to raise taxes on people making under $30,000 almost immediately.
And even those folks in the middle class who supposedly will get tax cuts, those tax cuts, many of them will expire after 10 years, whereas those tax cuts for the wealthy and for the corporations are permanent tax cuts?
That's right. That's exactly right, Juan. So within 10 years, families making under $75,000 a year will definitely see a tax increase. We're also very aware people who live in states where their state and local governments actually invest in their communities and have higher property and income taxes, mostly blue states, are going to not be able to deduct as much of that tax, much of that tax that they pay. And so it is going to put pressure on state and local governments to cut taxes as well. We are seeing a hollowing out of our national treasure. We are seeing nearly $2 trillion added to the deficit and the debt. And honestly, the big concern for us on that is think about all of the missed opportunities, the way that we could be investing in our infrastructure to stop poisoning our families, the way we could be transitioning to a clean energy economy, creating free college, affordable childcare, and healthcare. We could really do so much with these funds, and instead we are giving it to corporations and people who have never been richer and never been more profitable.
Let's go to Senator Bernie Sanders at a hearing talking about the tax bill's impact on the federal budget.
How many hours have I sat here and have you sat there, and we've seen all the charts and all the discussions about how terrible the deficit is, what it means, leaving this burden to our kids and our grandchildren. We heard all of that rhetoric year after year, and now we have a bill that raises the deficit by $1.4 trillion.
So $1.4 trillion. It raises the deficit. And then talk about the individual mandate and what affordable health care, what this is going to mean for that.
Well, those of us who follow this closely never believed the Republicans sort of chicken hawking about the deficit. We knew it was always about an ideological desire to shrink government so that they could cut taxes. And so what they're doing is cutting taxes and shrinking government, and it doesn't matter. The ruse that they're using is saying that that these tax cuts will grow the economy and therefore somehow pay for themselves. 41 out of 42 economists of all ideological stripes surveyed by the University of Chicago said that this massive tax cut would lead to no substantial economic growth. And CEOs are agreeing. They're saying if you give us a windfall without there being any change in the underlying dynamics, without more customers coming into our shops, because working and middle class people just don't have enough money to be fueling this consumer economy, we're just going to give that money to our investors and our shareholders. So it's going to be yet another aspect of the windfall that's not going to create middle-class good jobs. Workers just don't have the bargaining power to make that kind of a windfall to corporations translate into their pockets.
I want to ask you about two other aspects of this tax reform. One is where the Senate version of the bill is actually worse in some ways than the House, because there were some Republican senators who were concerned about the so-called pass-throughs, if you could talk about that, these LLCs that are basically used by lawyers and real estate people, and that they want a better cut for those who are use LLCs or limited liability companies. Can you talk about that?
That's right. So law firms, even hedge funds, lots of wealthy people who have business income that they get from, various endeavors.
Trump has like 500 of them.
The entire Trump organization, the vast majority of it itself is a pass-through. So that money comes in not into a separate business, but just comes straight through as personal income, and today is taxed at personal income. And because the vast majority of these people, these business owners, are in the 1%, they have the highest marginal tax rate. This would change it so that it would be that lower corporate tax rate that they're slashing. And so it would be a huge windfall to a lot of the people who constitute the Republican political donor base.
And what has happened to a pet peeve of mine has been what I call the amnesty for tax dodging corporations, this repatriation of money from overseas, where basically the plan that both many Democrats as well as Republicans supported was to retroactively lower the taxes that they haven't already paid so that they can repatriate them to the United States. What's happened to that in the bill?
That's you put it exactly as it is. And then they're going to have a 0% tax rate on foreign profits. So a lot of analysts are saying this will encourage even more companies to create operations overseas. So it would actually potentially make the job situation that we have even worse.
And the individual mandate.
And, you know, Republicans are obsessed with undoing President Obama's legacy, and so they want to go back at the incredibly unpopular attempt to repeal affordable health care in this country, and so they want to get rid of the individual mandate. The effect of that will be to make health insurance premiums go up for everyone. And if you look at the different just bread and butter issues that American families are struggling with, student debt, being able to afford a home, child care, health care, all of those things could go up considerably for working and middle-class families, while rich families get even more money for just opening an envelope from their
And you mentioned the effect on students. Well, today there are 44 graduate student walkouts planned around the country to protest a measure that is tucked away in the budget that passed the House earlier this month. That measure would amount to a pay cut of thousands of dollars for graduate students by reclassifying their tuition waivers as taxable income.
Students say the move could diminish the number of students who will even consider graduate school and hurt the chances for current students of finishing, impacting critical research. For more, we're joined from Hilliard, Ohio, by Jenna Freudenberg, a fourth-year graduate student in astronomy at Ohio State University and organizer with the Save Graduate Education movement, who's joining Heather McGhee in this discussion. Jenna, welcome to Democracy Now! Explain exactly what is in the House bill.
Thanks for having me. Yes, so the particular provision in the House bill that concerns graduate students the most is this provision that would reclassify our tuition waivers and tuition reductions as taxable income. The way that graduate education, especially for those of us pursuing PhDs, has proceeded in this country for many years is that we provide research and teaching services as part of our work as graduate students, and in exchange for that, we receive usually quite modest stipends, and we receive tuition waivers because universities recognize it's not economical for students to go into debt or to be unable to support themselves while they complete their PhDs. So this is the way it's been for quite a while. Under these new provisions, the waivers and the reductions that we receive in tuition would be taxed, and this would result in tax increases of hundreds and hundreds of %. Even for public university students, the situation is even more dire for students at private universities where the tuition is higher. So this is the particular provision we are most concerned about. However, this is just one of a number of troubling provisions in both the House and the Senate versions of the bill that target higher education. For example, under one of the versions of the bill, we would no longer be able to deduct our student loan interest payments from our taxes. The lifetime learning credit is going to be eliminated. And as you were discussing earlier, the state and local tax deductions are going to be eliminated, which are a major way that states are incentivized to provide funding for their public higher education systems. So this really is an assault on higher education, and it's something that graduate students in particular are finding very concerning.
What are your plans today?
So today we have about 50 universities at this point that have organized their own grassroots actions to protest this bill. At my university, Ohio State, we're actually hosting a teach-in and a grade-in where we are going to be publicly performing our work as academic laborers. We're going to be grading, we're going to be doing our research, we're going to be hearing from our colleagues about how this tax bill will affect them. At other universities, students are staging walkouts out of their classrooms. Students are holding rallies on their campus quads. Students are holding phone banking sessions to contact their local lawmakers. So we have a whole wide variety of grassroots actions, and we've decided to band together and hold all of those actions on the same day to send the message as this bill progresses through Congress that it would be terrible for grad students, terrible for higher education, and we strongly oppose it and urge our lawmakers to vote against it.
And have you been able to identify any particular lawmakers, especially, let's say, in the Senate, who might be open to pressure by students across the country or in particular states?
Well, it's a bit of a tricky one in the Senate because the Senate version of the bill does not have this particular provision that we've been discussing that would tax our tuition waivers. That particular provision is in the House version of the bill, and we've identified some lawmakers in the House that we've been trying to pressure. For example, Senator Pat Tiberi, who is the representative for the Ohio 12th District near Columbus here, is on the House Ways and Means Committee. He had a major hand in crafting this bill and will be instrumental in any future changes that might have to occur as part of a reconciliation process should this bill proceed through the Senate. So we're seeking public commitments from him, from other local Central Ohio lawmakers for my group, and for other local lawmakers for the other schools who are protesting today, as well as from our senators, that they will publicly commit to opposing any version of the bill that attacks higher education in this way.
So, Heather McGhee, what is gained by this and the profound effect this will have on education? I mean, schools across the country could lose half their graduate students who simply cannot afford to do this anymore.
We have seen over the past decade, really, an increasing campaign by the right-wing media to demonize higher education. And if you think about what are the sources of progressive values and power, they are labor unions, they are the government itself, the idea of a public good itself, and they are higher education. Republicans know that as you get more educated, you are more likely to hold progressive values and vote for a Democrat. I think this is very clearly part of a campaign to make college the enemy, to make higher education no longer the route to upward mobility that it has been. And there's no reason in an economy where getting a bachelor's degree is now the ticket to a middle-class job, which it shouldn't be, right? Working-class jobs shouldn't be poverty jobs. We should have strong unions and high labor standards so that you don't have to college to get a degree. But that's what the conservative economic system has created, and now they want to make that degree even more out of reach. One thing I did want to say, I think that the walkouts and the protests that Jenna and her colleagues are organizing are amazing, and we do still have some opportunity to kill this bill.
That's what I wanted to ask you about. What can be done with the steamroller, despite what public opinion is, the Republican majority and the president seem determined to get a bill passed in the next couple of weeks. And then, of course, the reconciliation of two bad bills will then begin. What can people who want to stop this do?
So I would recommend that people go to a source like indivisible.org that really gives excellent calling tools for you to be able to call your senator. Obviously, if you are in the states of Maine, Tennessee, Arizona, Oklahoma, Kansas, Wisconsin, or Montana, those are the places where Republicans have been on the fence for various reasons. After the press conference yesterday and the meeting with Donald Trump, a few of them said, I might be more willing to vote for the bill, but until they've actually done that roll call vote, people should be calling in, including to their Democratic senators, to make the impression very clear on the Hill that the American people are watching, because they know this is unpopular.
Heather McGhee, we have to wrap up now, and in fact, we're headed to Oklahoma to talk about another issue, to speak with a Cherokee lawyer and attorney about Pocahontas. What is her life story? But I did want to briefly ask you in this last 30 seconds, this latest news, Matt Lauer, NBC has fired him. This follows Charlie Rose. Right now, Congressman Conyers, we hear he may be holding a news conference. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus are also calling for his resignation around issues of sexual harassment. Of course, Harvey Weinstein, your thoughts on this?
This is a moment of reckoning. It is a moment of collective power for women who have felt that they individually could not speak up because men hold so many of the cards in workplaces, in industries. They hold so much of the political power in this country and the economic power. But women are discovering that there is strength in numbers and that they may just be believed. That's a wonderful thing. There is so much more accountability happening, though, on the side of media and in private industry than at the very top in the most powerful seat in this country, which is in the White House. And the idea that Roy Moore, someone who is so clearly a repeated child molester and pedophile, could be endorsed meaningfully by the White House, it makes your skin crawl. And I think that the Republican Party has a reckoning that they have to do about their morality as they take away children's health care, as they bankrupt our future, and endorse a pedophile.
You make a link between the tax plan and patriarchy.
Absolutely. I mean, this value system, that there's this sort of hierarchy of human value, that some groups of people are just worth more than others because they have more money and more power, is a part of a system. Racial hierarchy, patriarchy, white supremacy, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it play out very much where women, people of color, and the next generation are going to suffer from this tax plan.
And finally, of course, this is all happening under President Trump. President Trump, who himself has been accused by at least 16 women of sexual assault, now questioning even the tape that he did not question before, where he is caught on tape boasting about sexually assaulting women.
I don't think he's questioning it. I think he realizes from the first year of his presidency that he can lie and repeat a lie, and that some people will believe it, and that's what he's doing now.
Heather McGhee, head of Demos, thanks so much for being with us and Demos Action. And Jenna Freudenberg, Ohio State graduate student with Save Graduate Education. Thank you for joining us from Hilliard, Ohio. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we head to Tulsa, Oklahoma. President Trump attempted to insult the Massachusetts Congresswoman, Elizabeth Warren, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, by calling her Pocahontas. Who was Pocahontas? We'll speak with a Cherokee writer. Stay with us.